Okay, we are finishing up part two now of Gravity's Rainbow. We are on the last two episodes, episodes 7 and 8. Episode 7 concerns Slothrop and his journey up into Europe, into Switzerland. And then episode 8 concerns Pointsman being depressed about the loss, them losing Slothrop. And so it starts off with Slothrop still in Monte Carlo, or at Monaco rather, at the fictional casino that Hermann Goering is a fictional casino, and he's there putting together some more pieces. He learns more about Imapol XG, that it's a plastic designed by Laszlo Yamf, the guy who classically conditioned him. It was made available to IG Farben in 1939, and it's a plastic that is stable at high temperatures, like up to 900 degrees, so it could be fired on a rocket, I guess. And then he starts thinking about these connections once again between the cartels here in this paragraph on 254, where he says Imapol XG shows up on a mysterious insulation device on a rocket being fired with the help of a transmitter on the roof of the headquarters of Dutch Shell, who is co-licensee for marketing the Imapolex, a rocket whose propulsion system bears an uncanny resemblance to one developed by British Shell at around the same time. And oh boy, it just occurs to Slothrop now where all the rocket intelligence is being gathered into the office of who but Mr. Duncan Sandys, Churchill's own son-in-law, who works out of the Ministry of Supply, located where? But at Shell Mech's house, for Christ's sake. So we have Shell Mech's, we have Dutch Shell, we have Shell in association with England and of course America. And so all of these companies or divisions of Shell have contributed to funding the creation of this Imapol XG, and whatever it is that they're using it for, we don't know what they're doing with it. But they're all involved in funding it on both sides, even IG Farben as well. So on both sides, and so it's the shift from the nation state to the transnational cartel corporation world now that is emerging, and post-modernity is the primary political economic structure. Then he's looking through more documents, and he finally finds the first reference in the novel to the Escarate, the Schwarzgerät, the black box, the mysterious black box that is an association with a rocket that has the serial number of 5 zeros. And he says Slothrop hasn't even heard of any rockets with 4 zeros, let alone 5, nor an Escarate either. There's an I and a J Garate. They're in the guidance system, I presume. So he's thinking to himself about what the hell is this Escarate? And the Escarate will turn out to be a kind of MacGuffin that several characters will be looking for, such as the Schwarzkommando leader, Enzian. He will also be looking for the Escarate as well. And then as he's reading through the London Times casually, he learns of the death of Mucker Maffick. So Tantivy Mucker Maffick is now dead during the war. And now he begins to get very suspicious that they, with the capital T, might have had him killed. That's his paranoia, whether it's true or not. And now he's very depressed, and he decides that he's going to take Waxwing's advice and go to Nice. Waxwing has connections there, and Blodgett has also given him a zoot suit. So now he's wearing this sharp, purely white zoot suit as he goes to Nice. And so you notice, I want to point out, Weisenberger has a map here that's of interest that shows the arc throughout the novel of Slothrop's journeys. He's got a little map here on the left side there. He's got a map of Monaco. But here on the right side, you can see that Slothrop has gone from London down to Monaco, and then now he's headed for Zurich, and eventually to Germany. Notice that the arc is in the shape of a V. This is why Pynchon has him go this way in particular. And he disappears somewhere up there near the Baltic Sea. So there's that point to think about. Also, he has a diagram here of Peenemünde on the bottom. And notice that Peenemünde does indeed look like an island in the shape of a skull in profile, to be compared with Skull Island, which produces nature's badass, King Kong, and this produces the ultimate civilizational badass with the rocket that eventually leads to the ICBM. So those are handy little maps Weisenberger provides. So now he's in, he decides to go to Nice for a while. He isn't there very long. But he knows he's being followed by Secret Service agents who have picked up his trail. So now he decides to go to Zurich. And he goes to Zurich, and there are certain of Waxwing's contacts there. Apparently Waxwing has a very elaborate underworld set of connections. And he meets a man who, let's see, his name is, when he goes to, he's hanging out at the cafes, and he meets a Russian guy named Semyavin. And Semyavin asks him what it is he's interested in. He has almost no money, and he's just sort of, he doesn't know where he's going to sleep each night. He doesn't know where his next meal is going to come from. So he's really just slumming it. And Semyavin asks him, what are you interested in? What is it that I can get for you? And he says, information. And Semyavin goes, information. What happened to the good old days when it was just, dope and women? Those are easy to get. Information is a little tougher game. And then he tells him about 3 separate cafes that Slothrop should go investigate, and gives him a list, and he folds it into his pocket. And then Semyavin says this interesting line. He says, it'll get easier someday. It'll all be done by machine, information machines. You are the wave of the future. And of course, the internet is what ultimately does happen. Pynchon is correct here. It was very prescient back in 1973 that information machines would come to handle, the internet would be the thing that would come to handle, the computer first, and then the internet would handle all this. So then he meets another underworld guy named Mario Schweitar, who apparently works for Sandoz Laboratories, which is the pharmaceutical company where Albert Hofmann in Zurich synthesized LSD. And he's talking to him about LSD, and Schweitar tells him, by the way, that Laszlo Jempf is dead, the guy who classically conditioned him and invented Imipolix. And Slothrop is taken by surprise. He didn't know he was dead. And he tells him, Schweitar tells him where his grave is. It's up near the Uetliberg, the mountain that's just outside the town there. And he tells him he needs money. And then he meets, he's hanging out at the Odeon, the famous cafe where James Joyce and Albert Einstein, Trotsky and Lenin all used to hang out. So he's hanging out there for a while. And then he bumps into this Argentine anarchist named Squalidozzi. Squalidozzi is a guy who has hijacked a German U-boat, and it's parked somewhere off the coast. He's got somebody running it for him off the coast of Spain. Later, it'll go to Africa, off the coast of Africa. And Squalidozzi says he wants to go to Germany, and Slothrop asks him, that's not the place where you want to go. He doesn't know it yet, but he himself is headed for Germany, precisely to go to Peenemünde and Nordhausen. And then, so he tells him, once again, he really needs some money. The guy is nice enough to buy him a meal, and then he says, well, if you're interested, then I've got some errands for you. You can go to Geneva and deliver messages to other anarchists in Geneva. So this is what he does for a while to earn a little bit of cash. Pynchon says we'll keep him fed for months. So he's on a plane to Geneva. He flies there, and it's during his flights between Zurich and Geneva, running messages for these anarchists, that he loses the Secret Service agents that had been following him, as Pointsman in the next chapter will be very upset about. And then so eventually he goes to visit Laszlo Jempf's grave. At the end of this chapter, goes up near the Uetliberg, and then Mario Schweitar meets him there and gives him a dossier, some sort of package of documents that is about Laszlo Jempf's conditioning of him. We won't learn what the contents of those documents are until part 3. So that's it for episode 7. And then now episode 8, the point of view shifts back to Pointsman on a holiday, just as part 1 had ended with Pointsman getting a blowjob at a party at the White Visitation. Here we have him on the beach with Roger Mexico, Jessica Swan Lake, Katja Borgesius, and a guy who is another Shell employee named Dennis Joint. And this is now May 20th, 1945, which is Whitsunday, which is Pentecost. And the war is over now. On May 8th, VE Day has occurred. The war on the European in the European theater is done. The Japanese are still fighting, of course, all the way down to August. And so now with that, though, Pointsman is depressed about it. He's sitting there on the beach talking to himself out loud. He tells Roger Mexico that he's hallucinating and to shut up and leave him alone. And he's worried that they've lost Slothrop. They haven't heard about Slothrop or his whereabouts in an entire month, which has gone by, so they don't know where he's at. He has ditched them. He's disappeared into Europe. He will end up into the zone, in the occupied zone in part 3. And now he's also worried that they're going to dissolve Pisces altogether, since with the war over now in the European theater, a bunch of its employees like Rollo Grost is leaving, Edwin Treacle is leaving, Gavin Trefoil, the guy who could change the colors of his skin. Pisces is losing all of these people, but it has opened another office for some reason. I'm not sure why, if it would be closing, why they would open another office in London called the 12th House. Pisces is the 12th house in astrology, and I think Pointsman will go to work there. So he's very worried about Pisces being the whole project, his whole thing with Slothrop, which is his boy, his baby, is about to lose him. And Pointsman later will try to send a couple of guys to have Slothrop castrated. So Pointsman's not a nice guy. I think he's the closest thing the novel has to a villain. Him and Lieutenant or Captain Weissman, Blacero, are the two bad guys. But Pointsman is probably the least ethical guy in the whole book. And so he's sitting there brooding on the beach. Roger and Jessica are on the outs now. They're not really even acknowledging each other's presence much. It's because with the war being over now, for some reason, she wants to go back to Beaver, to Jeremy, her previous guy, which later on she will dump Roger. And Pointsman is a little worried about it because he wants to make sure that Roger is still willing to work for him in the White Visitation. So he's worried about keeping him, and he thinks, well, maybe one of the things people do when they lose a love is they bury themselves in work. They become workaholics. That is a common response. So he hopes that would be the response if Roger loses Jessica. And he's not sure. He's thinking about Katya Borgesius. Now, there's General Brigadier Pudding is ill from ingesting her shit. The E. coli bacteria in her shit has made Pudding ill. He will die from it. He's not taking the penicillin. He's old and probably forgetful. He's not taking the penicillin that Pointsman told him to take. So he's going to die. And he was the guy who was running the whole White Visitation. So the whole project appears at this point for the firm to be in peril. And these are precisely the characters who will later form the counterforce, not Pointsman. They're going to form a counterforce against him, the firm, the White Visitation, Roger Mexico. Jessica's going to drop out when she leaves him, and Katya Borgesius, and then Pirate Prentice also. And Pointsman is sitting here thinking about Pirate Prentice lately, has been turning up quite a bit, asking at the White Visitation about Katya. He seems to have the hots for her, but he doesn't know about Katya. He's been using her in connection with the S&M scenes with Brigadier Pudding, but he doesn't know if she's even a person who's capable of loving anyone, which I don't think she is, probably not. She's just one of those types. And so the whole thing appears to be in a state of disintegration here, the whole project. Even Slothrop's identity is in a state of disintegration now. He has taken on the identity of a war correspondent, Ian Scuffling, which is one of his avatars. Weisenberger says he goes through 8 avatars. I forget what all of them are. Rocket Man is one. The Pig Man is another. He's in that outfit when Pointsman sends 2 guys to castrate him, and a guy named Dwayne Marvey, I think he's a major. They end up castrating him instead because he's wearing the pig suit, so it gets quite comical. So next is the largest section in the book, In the Zone, which will take us into Germany and the chaos that's going on there. And the novel will get quite a bit more chaotic. It's This novel is a work of madness. It gets crazier and crazier as it goes along, as we'll see. And it starts with a quote, "Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore." As Slothrop gets up into the zone where things are really out of control. So we'll leave it there.